Singapore looks peaceful, clean streets, glass towers, calm skies. But behind that calm is a system built for survival. In just hours, this tiny city-state can turn ordinary citizens into a ready defense force. While bigger nations argue over budgets, Singapore quietly built one of the most efficient militaries in the world, without fighting a single war. This is how a city smaller than New York became the country no one dares to invade. Chapter 1. The strategy behind the unlikely army. Singapore shouldn't have a strong army, at least not on paper. It's smaller than many global cities, has no oil, no farmland, and no mountains to hide behind. But in 1965, when the country suddenly became independent, it faced a terrifying truth. It was completely on its own. Malaysia had just separated. Indonesia wasn't exactly friendly, and no major power was going to step in if things went wrong. So Singapore's founders made a radical decision: if they couldn't have size, they would build precision. Every system, every citizen, every street would play a role in defending the nation. Instead of pouring money into endless weapons, Singapore focused on brains, structure, and discipline. It studied how Israel trained civilians fast. It borrowed Swiss-style readiness models. It built partnerships with the US and Britain for technology and training. Within a decade, a country that started with almost no defense became one of the most organized militaries in Asia. The secret wasn't aggression, it was control. Control over logistics, training, and timing. Singapore didn't just build an army. It built a system, one that treats defense not as an emergency, but as a permanent part of everyday life. Chapter 2. National Service, the Invisible Engine. Every Singaporean male knows the moment it begins the letter. At 18, it arrives quietly, yet it changes everything. National service isn't a choice. It's the backbone of the country's survival strategy. When most nations debate whether conscription is outdated, Singapore doubled down on it, turning what others see as a burden into a national strength. For 2 years, every young man trains, learns discipline, and becomes part of a shared story. It's more than military drills. It's a system that creates unity across class, race, and background. The CEO and the cleaner both start at the same line, wearing the same uniform. The result? A population that doesn't just understand defense, it embodies it. By their mid-20s, most Singaporean men have handled real weapons, led teams, and understand the cost of stability. And when they return to civilian life, they bring that mindset into their jobs, families, and communities. That's what makes national service more than a defense policy. It's social engineering on a national scale, a quiet machine that keeps Singapore ready, disciplined, and psychologically united. Chapter 3. Technology as a force multiplier. For Singapore, technology isn't a luxury, it's survival. With barely 6 million people and no natural buffer zones, the country knew that numbers alone could never win a war. So it chose precision over size, intelligence over manpower. Every sensor, drone, and radar dish feeds into a digital nervous system that watches land, sea, and sky in real time. Command centers can track ships entering the Straits of Singapore, detect aircraft long before they cross into airspace, and coordinate units instantly through encrypted data links. It's not just about having tech, it's about how seamlessly it's woven into everything. Soldiers train with augmented reality. Combat vehicles share live maps. Even maintenance is automated, using predictive AI to spot faults before they cause failure. This digital-first mindset means Singapore fights smarter, not harder. Instead of waiting to react, it anticipates. Instead of building a massive army, it builds a network that's faster, leaner, and nearly impossible to surprise. And here's the twist. This same infrastructure that defends the country also powers its economy. The same data centers that secure the borders are the ones driving Singapore's smart city. Systems blurring the line between civilian and military innovation. Chapter 4. The mindset behind the machine. Singapore's military power doesn't just come from its weapons or systems. It comes from attitude. From day one, the country taught its citizens a rare kind of realism. No one is coming to save us. That single idea shaped an entire national culture. It turned fear into focus. Every policy, from housing to education, carries a hidden layer of defense logic. The army doesn't just train soldiers. It trains citizens to think systemically, to expect efficiency, and to never assume safety is guaranteed. Inside the military, this mindset translates to discipline that borders on obsession. Equipment is spotless, drills are precise, and logistics are rehearsed like clockwork. Outside the barracks, the same principles guide how the country is run. Planning decades ahead, avoiding chaos, and maintaining trust between government and people. It's a quiet, collective understanding. Survival depends on preparation. In most places, defense is an afterthought. In Singapore, it's a reflex. That's why even in times of peace, the country behaves like a system permanently on alert, calm on the surface, ready underneath. Chapter 5. The Citizen Army That Never Sleeps. Singapore's strength doesn't come from numbers. It comes from people, ordinary citizens ready to defend their home at a moment's notice. In 1967, the country introduced national service. Every male citizen and second-generation resident must serve not as a choice, but as a duty. At just 18, they leave home for 2 years of tough training in the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Civil Defense Force. But it's not just about building soldiers. It's about building discipline and unity. When their service ends, these men join the reserves ready to return whenever they're needed. Today, out of 6 million people, about 900,000 are active or reserve personnel. That's 1 in every 7 citizens, a level of readiness few nations can match. On a normal day, Singapore runs like any modern city. But within hours, it could transform into a fortress, roads secured. Bases manned, families prepared, because here, defense isn't separate from life. It's part of it. Singapore didn't just create an army. It built a nation of defenders, a citizen militia that never sleeps. Chapter 6. Geography, a blessing and a curse. Singapore's geography is both its weakness and its weapon. The island measures barely 50 kilometers across, smaller than most global cities. At first glance, that sounds like a nightmare for defense. There are no mountains to hide behind, no forests to retreat into. One strike could reach everywhere, but Singapore turned that limitation into strategy. Because the island is compact, its military can mobilize across the entire nation within hours. Supply lines are short, communication is instant, and coordination is smooth. Coastlines are fortified with radar, ports are guarded, and air bases are ready for rapid deployment. Every inch of the island is mapped, monitored, and protected. So yes, Singapore's size makes it vulnerable, but it also makes it fast, precise, and impossible to catch off guard. What looks like a weakness has become its sharpest strength. Chapter 7. Neighbors and Realities. Singapore doesn't live in a quiet neighborhood. To the north lies Malaysia, friendly, but sometimes politically unpredictable. Across the water sits Indonesia, massive, complex, and still modernizing its forces. In between these regional giants, Singapore stands like a well-armed island of stability. It can't afford mistakes. That's why every policy, every alliance, and every dollar spent on defense is meant to guarantee one thing: survival. Even its diplomacy follows a simple rule: be small but never weak. Singapore trades with everyone, stays neutral in global conflicts, yet keeps its guard high. It knows peace isn't permanent, it's... Chapter 8. The Economics of Survival. Singapore doesn't just defend itself with weapons, it defends itself with money. From the start, the government treated the economy as part of national security. A rich, stable Singapore is harder to threaten than a poor, desperate one. That's why it built one of the world's strongest financial systems: low corruption, world-class ports, and strict fiscal discipline. Every dollar earned fuels infrastructure, education, and technology, the invisible armor that keeps the island alive. While other nations argue over politics, Singapore quietly builds reserves worth hundreds of billions. Those funds can sustain the country for years if trade stops or conflict erupts. In short, Singapore's greatest weapon isn't its army, it's its economy. Chapter 9. Made not of the future of trust. Singapore knows the next war won't be fought with bullets, it'll be fought with data. That's why it's shifting from manpower to mind power. Artificial intelligence, drones, and cyber defense units now play the frontline role. Every sector from finance to energy is linked to national defense. The goal is simple: make the country impossible to cripple, even if the internet or power grid goes down. Chapter 10. The real reason Singapore can't afford to lose. For Singapore, defense isn't about pride. It's about existence. This island has no natural resources, no vast army, no fallback territory. If it ever falls, there's nowhere to retreat, no second chance. That's why every citizen, every policy, and every dollar is built around one truth: survival is not guaranteed. From schools that teach resilience to leaders who plan decades ahead, the nation operates like a system designed never to collapse. Singapore can't afford to lose because losing means disappearing, and that's what makes it powerful. A country small enough to vanish, yet smart enough to ensure it never will. The army is smaller than ever, but smarter than most. Robots handle surveillance, AI predicts threats, and citizens are trained to spot digital attacks before they spread. Singapore's defense strategy has evolved from protecting land to protecting systems, information, and identity. It's no longer just about survival, it's about staying ahead in a world where wars can start with a single click. Conclusion: the island that refused to fall. Singapore's story is proof that power isn't always about size. It's about strategy. Country smaller than most cities built one of the most advanced defense systems on Earth, not because it wanted to fight, but because it had to survive. Every skyscraper, every soldier, every dollar saved is part of one long mission: to make sure this tiny island never becomes a footnote in history. Singapore's real strength isn't its weapons or its wealth, it's its will. A nation born vulnerable that chose to become unbreakable.